all those things that we were hypotheticals at the time that we were trying to get that amendment passed are actually true. That is exactly the technology they want to put in your car. They have to know your geolocation data. They have to know where you're at in order to passively monitor you. They have to know if your car is swerving within the lane that it's in. They will have something to monitor the air in your car. So it is like a breathalyzer always going on every driver, whether or not you've ever been convicted of drunk driving. They are treating you as though you're guilty of impaired driving.
I mean, that is true. That's what I say that. I mean, so we talk about we have to educate our citizens. We had to educate the legislators as well.
We did.
They had no idea. So they were asking them, okay, we need you to solve this problem. And they're not even aware that there is a problem. And literally in the bill, it talks about it's going to passively monitor. Well, that means it's got to be constantly monitoring you because they've got to know when you're drunk or whatever. And then we were told it could look like most cars have the push button. They're going to be able to read in your finger if you're detect a blood alcohol detection. It also talks about your breath. And so I remember being in one of the offices and I said, well, my daughter's in a sorority in college. And when she's the DD, I mean, are they going to kill her car because she's got the drunk girls in her? I mean, like it just literally made no sense. And I think the biggest thing, the best thing that we found, because we were literally trying to explain it in these offices, and we're like, I mean, these hackers are just going to, I mean, the government can just shut off your car. And I mean, what is it going to look like? And this and that. Well, we literally found a video from like 10 years ago, 2014, where these two hackers are sitting on a couch and they hack this Jeep. Now, mind you, this is an experiment. The guy knows that he's going to be hacked. He's driving on the freeway of St. Louis. And all of a sudden they take over his control of his car. So his onboard camera, they put a picture on that. And then they blasted his air conditioner, they blasted his radio, they made the windshield wipers spray and go on. And then they killed the car. And he's panicking. He is literally freaking out. And he's like, and they're like laughing. It won't work. And so finally he had to turn the car off to start it back. And then he's like, okay, I'm pulling over. I have PTSD. There was no shoulder for him to pull over on when his car was killed. And that's what we were talking about. If someone's really drunk, how do you expect a drunk to navigate over to traffic? What if there's not a shoulder on the road? I mean, we just kept having all these hypotheticals. I mean, is insurance going to be notified when you're pulled over? We know that in Texas, the AG, Attorney General Paxton, just had to put out, I don't think he sued him, but he put out a
litigation against General Motors.
Yeah, that they were literally, the car manufacturers were giving personal data to the insurance companies on drivers. So we know that they can do all of this. We know that this exists. And if two hackers 10 years ago can sit on a couch and hack this, what can the federal government do? You know what I mean? And people's eyes were just so big. But finding that video, I think, was such a gem because it literally reiterated. I mean, is law enforcement automatically going to be notified? I mean, then now do you start this whole court process? I mean, it's kind of like the red light cameras that Terri helped get rid of here in Texas, you know?
So at the time when we went up and tried to get this, it was within 3 weeks of our visit that the THEAD bill came up and the vote took place. And we lost the vote by 28 votes. When in a House of 450 members, that's a really close vote. And unfortunately, 19 Republicans voted with many Democrats to defeat that. And we thought that was interesting. We had Thomas Massey from Kentucky agreed to carry it for us. He's a really good guy on transportation committee in the House. His knowledge of technology is incredible because he has more patents than anyone in Congress, really, and a lot more than most U.S. citizens, period, more than most companies, in fact. And so he's very, very savvy on the technology side. And so since this is very tech heavy, he was just the natural fit to carry that amendment for us. And even he was surprised. I mean, AOC, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, actually voted for our amendment to defund this kill switch. So that means the 19 Republicans that voted against our amendment are to the left of AOC. And her reasons for it were concerns with big daddy nanny state government surveillance, right? And so we at least respect that, that she voted for our amendment for that reason. But since that time when we were up in D.C., that December, because they knew we were coming after that technology, it had now made front page news the next morning. literally that whole week, Rachel and I got nothing but deer in the headlights from all the people on the transportation committee. Nobody knew about it. No one was talking about it. And then the next morning after this floor vote that Thomas Massey in his great speech and, making this big splash about it, now it's on Glenn Beck and it's on Daily Wire and it's on, I don't know, it was on everything. Fox News, on Laura Ingraham. And it was just like everybody's now talking about what is this crazy technology? Well, so if you're the DOT and you're, a different party, which is controlled by the Biden-Harris administration, and they're hearing and seeing all this, they're like, oh no, well, we better do something. So they started to release what's called their draft rule for this kill switch. And that happened last December. So almost a year ago. And what we found in that is that all those things that we were hypotheticals at the time that we were trying to get that amendment passed are actually true. That is exactly the technology they want to put in your car. They have to know your geolocation data. They have to know where you're at in order to passively monitor you. They have to know if your car is swerving within the lane that it's in. They will have something to monitor the air in your car. So it is like a breathalyzer always going on every driver, whether or not you've ever been convicted of drunk driving. They are treating you as though you're guilty of impaired driving. And then they also have something that would be an eye monitor. So if your eyes are, kind of getting whatever, I don't know what they're looking for. Or maybe like for me, I have 10 kids. So I'm often turning my head to look around what's happening in the back seat, or maybe having a few conversations with some kids back there. Or you're just turning your head like you're supposed to when you're turning lanes. If they think that your eyes are off the road for too long, all these things can then trigger a kill switch and them cutting power to your car. And so, to Rachel's point with this guy, when his car was hacked, he was sober and couldn't get his car over safely because most cars have power steering now. You cut power to your car, you can't even steer your car. You're literally just stuck there in the middle of the lane going like 0 miles per hour eventually, where you can have very fast traffic that cannot compensate, come and hit you like just a moving target. And what I think a lot of our transportation committee members can appreciate, and maybe the public doesn't know this, but the top 3 reasons for accidents in our country have nothing to do with congestion. It's actually weather, what they call incidents or accidents, and construction, road construction. Those are the 3 top reasons for delay per the Federal Highway Administration. Well, think about this. If you have the kill switch happening on people for various reasons, they've had, 3 strikes, you're out, or whatever it ends up being. If your eyes are doing this and your car's doing that, maybe you're swerving out of the way of trash or debris on the road. Who knows what it is? It could be legitimate. It doesn't have to be that you're impaired or that you're drunk. But you create all these incidents where you now have cars like a wasteland all across America's highways that are functioning vehicles and have no reason to be stuck on the side of the road or in the middle of the road. You're creating a massive amount of congestion and chaos on our public roadways that would be, creating danger that we have never seen before. And we have good relationships with many auto dealers here in Texas. And when one of them, I was speaking with her, and she said, look, there's over 300 chips, computer chips, in every vehicle now in today's cars. And so all of these systems that we're talking about, we kind of call it a switch, a kill switch, but it's really more than that. It's going to be so integrated into every system of your car that it's going to be extremely hard for you to extricate that out if we ever want to, say we want to disable this, or we don't want this technology, or even in Texas, we're having trouble crafting the legislation, which we're doing again right now, working with a lot of our good guy legislators and champions on this issue of how do we do that? Because, it's going to be integrated into almost every system in your car. So it's a very complex issue now, but it's one of the biggest threats to our freedom to travel. Even worse than toll roads, will be in every car, and whether you like it or not. And so we're working very hard to be able to have the owner of the vehicle be able to disable this technology in some way.
Not only is the federal government playing with this technology, Ford is also playing with this technology. They want to use this technology to be able to repossess vehicles. So if someone hasn't paid their bill, so it is being weaponized left and right. It's crazy. And another thing, what I think got some of the legislators have said, so who pays for this? If I cause a wreck, is it my insurance or is the federal government paying because y'all killed my car? And then you could just see like, holy smokes, our trillions of dollars in debt is just skyrocketed, you know?
Yes, exactly. I mean, it brings up major liability concerns. And is it the insurance company? Is it the auto manufacturer? Is it the government who killed the switch? Who gets called to come rescue all these drivers? How long is your car disabled for? And really, like Thomas Massey said in his argument in favor of our amendment, was the technology becomes the judge, jury, and the executioner right there on the spot. Because how do you defend yourself from a technology that you don't have any control over, that is being weaponized against you, and you have to get somewhere, or you have to get to safety? And who do you call? Who do you appeal to get your car to operate again? So all of these create a massive can of worms that's never been seen before in our country. And I think that Congress, and particularly Pelosi, who rammed this through the way they did without real debate and without the normal process and the ability to, even amend the bill, much less know what was in it and have time to know what was in it. We've got to change the way business is done in Washington. And I know that your viewers are well aware of that. But this is yet another area that we want to get on people's radar to realize this has some potential life and death consequences to it. And we need people to be aware that you don't want to buy a car with one of these in it until we get this repealed.
Right. And major infringements on your rights.
They were very smart where they put this in the bill because they put it under impaired driving.
Right.
So mad. Mothers Against Drunk Driving were against the amendment to stop this.
That's right.
Like they're totally on board with this happening in the vehicles because, obviously their whole organization exists to stop drunk driving. And so they're being told, hey, this is going to prevent drunk driving. And so they literally came out in droves against us on this.
Not knowing that there's, like I said, there's that area, but then there's all these other parts to
That's
it
right.
that just...
There's a lot of, and we find this with so much legislation, and I know Rachel sees this as well, that there's a lot of unintended consequences to most legislation, that you could have a very pure motive for passing some of these bills, but what they don't realize, and we see this happen, because then the next session they'll come back and go, oh, well, we didn't realize it was going to do this. So we need to do, they call it a cleanup bill. Well, this is going to create serious cleanup if they unleash this on our American roadways. And so we're trying to head it off at the pass and keep it from going into the cars. So the draft rule is out. The final rule will be following. I think some people are hunkered down, obviously, until this election tomorrow. But who knows what the timeline's going to, it could pick up very rapidly if it's a Harris administration. And we hope that under the Trump administration that we would have, more sympathy in hearing us on this issue and getting this mandatory technology out of the cars. It's one thing if you want it as part of your anti-theft device that you as an owner, a vehicle owner, knows is there and that you can control and that the third-party government can't get a hold of it to weaponize against you. That's a completely different issue than the government having this mandated in your car and you not having any way as a citizen to really appeal the decision made by technology.
Right. And stop it. Yeah, that is scary.
Well, and I don't know if this is politically correct to say, but it's just the truth. We know that there have been hundreds of thousands or millions of people that have poured over our border. We have no idea where they are, but we literally want to treat every American citizen as if they're, a criminal. It's ludicrous,
It's criminalizing you for driving. It's for doing your everyday normal life, just living your normal life. You would now be, in a way, criminalized, or at least have the opportunity for the government to weaponize this technology against you. And of course, we also try to broaden it. Like we do our public talks around the state, Rachel and I, when we go around to different groups and talk to them about this. One of the things we talk about is how easily could this be used against you to enforce the next pandemic. In the next lockdown in your city or wherever you live, and they can keep you literally from driving. This could also happen. We see this. We've had Joe Biden talk about this multiple times. Climate emergency, that term, climate emergency. Well, if they deem that there's too much, air pollution or what have you, we need to get cars off the road. So now, boom, we're going to enact this technology because we have a climate emergency today. So that's yet another area where your viewers can also be at work on this. Is we still need to clean up a lot of the Disaster Act and these emergency powers that have been kind of latent and put into code. Like in Texas, it was put in the code back in the 70s. So we need to be updating these to foresee what was happening and the abuses that took place during COVID don't happen again and be used against us, like we saw with, business and health and everything else in your life. Well, they're going to do it on transportation as well. And this type of technology will absolutely allow the government to do that. So, it's not a big leap anymore post-COVID for people to understand how badly this can be abused against drivers.
Definitely. Now, and I know there's so many things I guess we're going to definitely see. Things are, tomorrow, I guess, is going to be a big deciding factor as what we're going to see too, as far as how fast some of these things are implemented and what direction things are going to go as well. Correct?
Absolutely. It really is going to make, it's like literally black and white. It couldn't be more opposite of the consequences of tomorrow's election. There's no question that, the left, if you will, has been pushing this very hard. They literally think roads are racist. They want equity and DEI in all transportation decision making. They don't want you in your car. They don't want you to have freedom. They want you to be trapped in a 15-minute city, which, Rachel, you can talk about that. And it is an absolute nightmare if you are a freedom-loving American that wants your life back, your country back, and to not have to worry about the government over your shoulder every minute of the day, as we've all kind of felt since COVID. We're not going to have that back if the election, makes a steer to the left. So the consequences couldn't be greater tomorrow for sure. But Rachel, do you want to kind of tackle the 15-minute city concept that came about in Paris during COVID?
Yeah. Essentially, you are going to be geo-fenced in. You literally are in walking distance of your store, your doctor, your school. There's no need for you really to drive because you're just going to be right there, a 15-minute walk wherever you need to go. And if it's outside of your 15-minute radius, then you don't need to go there. And we know that they're already using digital IDs. They've got cameras on every corner, chip on your credit card. They're literally can use any of that stuff to geofence us in, essentially. And, you're outside of your 15-minute city. I'm sorry, because there are probably some power walkers out there that they might go 20 minutes outside, and they're like, oh, no, you're outside of your limit. And another thing that we're seeing here this November is there is a lot of taxes on the ballot. And they are literally trying to do, they're taxing a higher tax to the people out in the counties versus the people inside city limits. Well, they're doing anything that they can do to get you out of your vehicle to stop driving, and then to push you into the cities. And they don't want you living on your farmland and having your wide open spaces.
Or heaven forbid being off the grid, right? People who are trying to live off the grid and have their own, independent life and be self-sufficient and self-sustaining. That's a big no-no for the left because they don't want you to be out from under their thumb.
Yeah, that the property, that's the other thing. I noticed that. That's another thing. But I know a lot of, there was a lot of foreign people buying land, in big chunks of it in the United States. And then there's another group that's actually people in the United States that are trying to buy that land too, to keep it's like this whole thing, like kind of like a grassroots effort to take back the land that it is here in the United States, like the people can own or whatever. So it's, definitely
there is something else. I didn't know if you wanted to address it right now or not, but one of the other things that was buried in that bill that passed in 2021, the Biden infrastructure bill, is a pilot mileage tax program. And that is a second way that we think they're going to use that technology and tracking every mile you drive and making you pay for every mile you drive to become the new norm for government, so that they can use that in tandem with technology like the kill switch to use it as a de facto carbon tax. Because they will know how can they ration or control your carbon footprint if they don't know, one, where you are, how to be able to stop you from driving your car, but also to know how much carbon footprint you are actually making according to them. So
Right.
that's one of the other things that's been a big push. And of course, that just brings it all back to how we started at Turf, which is fighting tolls. So this becomes like a toll on every mile you drive. Every road becomes a toll road under a mileage tax scenario. And this is a federal program. They've been studying it through that. They've expended money on doing that. They have this graphic we show in our presentations of 3 different things that the Government Accountability Office is already doing in some of their early reports on the mileage tax, of how and what kind of technology they would do to track your miles. It could be through a GPS satellite technology. It could be through the actual odometer reading on your car. It might be a tag like a toll tag, where it sends that information per mile and pings it every so often and sends that information to a central office. So if you think that government surveillance state is not coming for you, it absolutely is. And one thing that really shocked Rachel and I last legislative session last year was the fact that we had a state mileage tax bill not only make its way through the House, it actually got heard in the Senate committee too, and was on its way to hitting the Senate floor before we were able to get enough momentum to stop it. And this is in a state that claims to be low tax, low regulation, we're limited government. I mean, all the stuff these Republicans tell us up one side, down the other when they come and campaign in your city, and when they come home from Austin back home. And yet here they were passing a potential mileage tax. And what's crazy about the Texas bill, you would not think this was ever anything that would ever see the light of day in the state of Texas. Let me tell you what was in it. The original filed bill was going to study how to implement a mileage tax in such a way that they could know what kind of car you drive, and your toll or your mileage tax would be based on if you're in a gas guzzler or are you in a more fuel efficient car. So it was on the type of car you drive, if you're carpooling or not, because that's a no-no to drive solo in your car. Big no-no for the left. They don't want you driving alone. You have to carpool or be in an Uber in order to be, permitted to drive. So that was the second thing they looked at. Then they also looked at this is the part that just floors us as conservatives. The income of the driver was going to in part determine the mileage tax you paid. It was individualized to you based on income. That is straight up socialism. Straight up socialism. And it was redistribution of wealth, if you will. And we found in that same GAO report that was studying the federal mileage tax, and they were reporting what different states are doing as part of their implementation of their pilot studies of the mileage tax. One of the things they talked about was this concept of equity with the mileage tax. And so the equity becomes those who can afford to pay more should pay more. And that's literally lifted straight out of the GAO report on the mileage tax, that they want those who have the means to pay for it and pay higher taxes than everyone else should be charged more based on your income. And that completely flies in the face of a very fair system that's worked for many, many decades. And since the 50s, when Eisenhower implemented the interstate system, it was the gasoline tax. And they argue that, that's getting obsolete because we're moving so many cars to EVs. And of course, the left wants all cars to be EVs, that we're not going to have a gas tax to fund our roads anymore. So we have to look for an alternate form of funding. That's the excuse. That's the hook, which there is some validity to that. However, they haven't raised the gas tax in over 20 years in Texas and on the federal level. So if you're not getting enough money from that gasoline tax to pay for our roads and infrastructure, then you need to make the case to the American people that they should pay more in gasoline tax to fund that. But they don't want to do that because the last time Congress raised the gasoline tax on the federal level, half of Congress got dumped. So they're terrified of doing that. But we're like looking at them going, you think a mileage tax is somehow less controversial than that? So, obviously.
I told him, I said, because Canales, the Democrat committee chair of Transportation House, he tried to act like, well, there's all these electric vehicles on the road and they're not paying their share. And I said, okay, then do a carve out. Make this only for electric vehicles. Like, I'm fine with my gas tax. Also in Texas, our gas tax is under a constitutional lockbox essentially. So it has to go towards that, except for there's, I think, 5 cents that goes to the school districts. Well, take that money back. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, do another constitutional amendment and take
That's
the
right.
5 cents back to the school districts if you need to do that. But, yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. And so, but I said, well, then do a carve out. If this is really about electric vehicles, which it's not, and we know it's not. And of course, they don't want to do that because they literally want us to be. And what's so funny is my father-in-law, they've started paying obviously a little more attention since I've obviously been paying more attention. And he goes, can you believe this mileage tax? Well, I started telling him about it. And he goes, well, who do I call? I'm calling them right now. I said, that is literally every road that we drive on. It's going to be a toll. And he said, well, who do I call? I'm going to call right now. Give me the names and the numbers. I'm like, oh, well, we already killed it. We just killed it. But he was floored that, like Terri said, that it had gone through the committee, it had gone to the House floor, and then it had gone over to the Senate committee. And I mean, it's just crazy.
In a red state that claims to be lower taxes and more conservative and limited government. And that's what we find all the time. It's just like in DC where conservatives get frustrated when they see Republicans cave and they don't have a spine, and they're constantly watering down things, and they're negotiating with Democrats all the time, and they compromise with Democrats on key things that just drive us all crazy. And we see the same exact thing happening in the Texas legislature. And that's what your Texas audience needs to understand, that everything that drives you crazy about Washington, D.C., it's ditto in Austin, Texas during session. And Rachel's shaking her head because she saw it firsthand. That was her first session of being real involved and engaged in the legislative process. And everything that she saw in D.C. was exactly what you see in Austin, Texas. And it is very frustrating. But that just means we have to be vigilant. It doesn't matter who wins this election. It's going to take vigilance on the part of the taxpayer to have to unravel what the deep state does every single day. They wake up every single day and they're advocating against you. They're trying to take your freedom. They're trying to take your money. They're trying to get government-sanctioned monopolies. They're trying to just rig the system to make it easier for them to get that money rolling in without them having to actually compete in the real world. And there's an army of them against us every single day. And it's going to take all of us getting active and getting involved and knowing who to call and when, just like Rachel's father-in-law. That's what you got to do. Educate your family, everyone around. And, we come and speak to groups. It doesn't matter. I don't care if it's an HVAC group, a trade group, a business chamber of commerce. I don't care what group it is. Everybody needs to know about this. And we are happy to come talk to your group and make people aware of how they can get involved and what and when and where to do it.
Now, where would people, if they want more information, want to know more about you and your group, the organization, where would they find that?
Our website's probably the best way. It's texasturf.org. It's Texas spelled out, TURF as in freedom.org, texasturf.org.
Okay, perfect. And they can also contribute too as well, correct?
Oh, absolutely. We would always appreciate that because we do incur expenses traveling to and from Austin and, having to go to DC, which we don't necessarily like.
Terri, do you remember when we were in DC and it was like our third day in and we were standing on the corner and I said, DC doesn't seem as swampy as Texas. I was like, Austin is so much swampier than DC. And she goes, well, that's because it all happens underground. And then we went underground and I was like, oh, you're right. It's just as bad. But it always felt like Austin is even worse than DC. It was so terrible.
It is. They do hide it better. When you're out on the street, it's true. In Washington, D.C., it's very cleansed. You don't really see all that negotiating and everything that goes on under the belly of the beast. But there's a whole little metro system, if you will, underneath the Capitol. And that's where reps have their own special little people mover system that gets them to and from all these big buildings. And they do a lot of negotiating in all these little side rooms. Stuff that's the public has no idea that any of this stuff exists. But that's where a lot of the deals are done. That's where the deal making's done. And we've seen this happen all the time in the Texas legislature as well. The MO, if you will, of these lawmakers is they don't like a big public messy debate. What they really want is everything to be done in the back room, whether it's in their Republican caucus or in the Freedom Caucus or in the Democrat caucus or in the whatever legislative study committee people or whatever. They all get in these little back rooms and start negotiating all the stuff that's going to happen, usually among very few members. And then they come out and tell their Republican colleagues, well, this is what we're voting on. This is what we agreed to. And everybody vote for the bill. And so, there's not really a lot of public or transparent debate that takes place on most of this legislation. So then they get behind the dais, they're there at the committee or on the floor of the, House or Senate or something. And it's like, we all look at each other and go, how that thing just passed in less than 30 seconds. No one said a word. How, they like put the gavel down, boom, it passed. And you wonder what just happened here? What's going on? I mean, this looks like a dereliction of duty. And for the most part, it really is, because they try and take as much of that out of the public process and where the public can view and know what's happening in time to stop it. It's all designed to come in, already have consensus before they ever walk in the door, and boom, down goes the gavel, and it's passed before the public even knows what's in it.
That's something to say. Yeah, it's crazy. I know. And I think, like you said, it's in every state as well. So it's something that we need to be more educated on as, the public in general and as a society.
One thing they do in Texas that's kind of unique, and other states apparently don't operate this way, which makes me, upset with our state. We're supposed to be very proud of our state as Texans. And I hate to, case on them, but this is one thing that's built into the rules that shouldn't be allowed in our view. And that is allowing them to come in. Like, you'll have a posting. It's supposed to be a certain number of hours. I want to say 72 hours, just like most public deliberative bodies are. But it may be a little bit tighter time frame for the legislature, especially in the later weeks when they have to remove bills quicker. But anyway, it's roughly anywhere between 24 and 72 hours. They have to give you notice of when a bill's going to be heard, right? And so they have this posting, and if you're on their committee notice, alerts, you'll get it in your email box and such. And so you go and you read all the bills that are up on that agenda, and you're familiar with what's in them, what they do, and you prepare your testimony, and you're all ready to go on these bills being heard. Well, what they do in Texas is they allow the author of the bill to come up to the dais and lay out a bill layout and completely switch out the language of the bill on the fly in real time, with nobody knowing what's in it except for that author and what they tell you it now does. You don't get to see the language of it at all. And they can potentially bring that up for a vote and vote it out before you, the member of the public, even knows what that bill is saying or what's in it. And that's called a committee substitute. And they allow that in Texas. They should not allow that. If you want to make a change to your bill, you either need to put forward a formal amendment to your original language, or you need to pull it down, wait a week, change the language, post the new language, and put it up, and then wait, for the public to be and have your colleagues have the ability to read through it and know what's in it before you bring it up for a hearing. And that is one huge abuse that takes place that makes it extremely hard for people to know how to stop something once they move those bills through really quick at the end, especially. It's all part of the technique and the mechanism of the power structure to keep the public from really knowing what's going on and being able to stop bad stuff when it comes through at the end.
That's crazy. No, but I know so many things that we definitely have to, like I said, and also your site has educational stuff as well, right? People can read up.
It sure does. We have something called the Grassroots Action Center tab on our website.
Okay.
And it literally takes you through, under session resources, every single good and bad transportation bill since 2007. And we also have a report card we produce at the end of each legislative session, so you can see your legislators' grades on how well they voted on transportation issues. At the end of that report card, we tell you all the bills we used to do the report card. Every single member of the legislature in Texas is made aware of how we're asking them to vote on each of those bills before it ever becomes part of our report card. So it's all full disclosure to them before they ever take a vote, so that we're not just doing a gotcha later. And we have our voter guide on there. Every election cycle, we have it up there right now for the general election coming on November 5th. And then we do for the primaries, we do it for every just about every election cycle for the Texas legislature for sure. And we have other things like our public talks. Some of the talks we've done through the years, we try to post those every few months and put it up there so you can educate yourself, go through our slide, our PowerPoint slides and things like that. See some of the videos, if we have videos, look at the graphics we're talking about, from that GAO report and things like that. It's got a graphic of the 15-minute cities, and it gives and we source it all so you know where to go to look into more depth to know that we're not just making this stuff up. I mean, this is all literally pulled from their own documents.
Right.
And so we have a lot of resources available on our website, and you can look at, previous litigation we've had to do through the years and how that's helped bring transparency and accountability to the process as well when needed, as well as all of our bills that we have put forward and what the status of all those things were from session to session. So you have an idea of what kind of advocacy we do, what we're about. And trust me, we are for the taxpayers and for freedom and liberty when it comes to our freedom to travel. And there's just nobody out there that's doing this except Rachel and I and the grassroots that are behind us.
Well, it's amazing. I'm so glad that you were able to join us today and all the great, talk about the great things that you're doing, and definitely, keep it up. Keep fighting for the people and the rights that we, want to protect. And I definitely hope that you can come back on again, maybe after the elections, and we can talk a little bit more about some of these other issues going on.
Absolutely. We'd be delighted.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Texas Roundup.